If you're into podcasts, you should check out our podcast, Criminalistic Presents Into the Killing. It's about cold cases that were eventually solved. New episodes are released every other week. It's available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and anywhere you find your favorite podcasts. Number 3. The Houngan. In Haitian custom, a Houngan is a high priest. He is often a town elder who conducts ceremonies or rituals as per Haitian custom. These priests also serve as influential community leaders. In the history of Haiti, there have been several notable Houngans. For instance, it was Houngan Duddy Boukman who is said to have started the slave revolt that led to the Haitian Revolution of 1791. But in the country's rich folklore, there have also been Houngans said to practice voodoo or black magic. And one of the Houngan's voodoo rituals is said to bring the dead back from the grave. Noted Swiss anthropologist Dr. Alfred Maitre, who has specialized in studying Haitian voodoo during the early part of the 20th century, recounts a horrific tale in his 1958 book, Voodoo in Haiti. It seems Dr. Maitre once met a wealthy landowner in Haiti who swore this story was true. The man, who the doctor only called Monsieur, a title given to mostly rich men of the area, said that while driving through a poor village one day, his sports car suffered a flat tire. While examining the wheel, he was approached by an elderly man with a white beard. The old man didn't identify himself as the village priest, but that is what he was, a Houngan. The Houngan told the rich man that a few local men would repair the tire for a small fee. But while the man was waiting, why not sit for some coffee and conversation? Pleased by the hospitality of this village, the wealthy man accepted the offer. And he soon found himself in the kitchen of the priest's humble home. After some pleasantries, the old man admitted his secret to the rich man. He was a Houngan who once practiced sorcery, and when he saw the sports car driving through the town, he was struck by his sense that the vehicle had been charmed with some type of evil curse. The Houngan himself conjured the spell that caused the tire to go flat in order to save the rich man from a violent end. But instead of thanking the priest, the wealthy man nearly spit out his coffee with laughter. He didn't believe in the power of Houngans or evil spirits or protection charms. It was ridiculous, he said. Unfortunately, the monsieur's mocking angered the priest. He fixed the gaze on the monsieur and asked him if he'd known another wealthy man from the same part of Haiti as the monsieur. His name was Celestin. Taken aback, the rich man did know Celestin, but he had died the year earlier. In fact, he had been one of the mourners at the man's well-attended funeral. Thitherward, the Houngan went to a wall and took down a whip. The priest then cracked the whip 6 times, startling the monsieur. After a tense moment, the kitchen door opened to reveal a man who shambled towards the table, carrying a tray of fruit. The vigord's awkward gait and hunched-over posture at first prevented the monsieur from seeing the figure clearly. But as he set the tray down, the rich man was shocked to see that this man was in fact his late friend, Celestin. The monsieur dropped his mug, which smashed on the floor. Although his clothes were rags and he was gaunt and pale, there was no mistaking it was him. The wealthy man tried to talk to Celestin, but got no response. And the zombified man silently shambled out of the kitchen again. The Houngan, pleased at the rich man's shock, leaned across the table and calmly explained that it might be in the best interest to believe in the power of a Houngan, lest something similar should happen to him. Believe the story if you like, but what is fact is that Dr. Maitre's reputation was, and is today, impeccable in academic circles. His book, Voodoo in Haiti, was groundbreaking in that it fully brought to light the concept of zombies in Haitian culture. In fact, the problem of zombies is so widespread in Haiti that the government was forced to pass legislation preventing the zombification of the dead, a no zombies law, if you will. The law, ratified in the 1880s, states that any attempt to use poison or sorcery on a person without giving death and that causes a more or less prolonged state of lethargy should be considered murder. And the law is still in the books today, which perhaps means there are those in Haiti who still skirt the law, and that there may be zombies who walk among us. Number 2. The Devil and Dr. John. In the 1790s, many French colonists in Haiti fled the area thanks to that revolution we mentioned. They traveled northwest, past Cuba, and through the Gulf of Mexico until they landed on the southern shore of the nascent United States. Given the origin of these refugees, it perhaps isn't surprising that many tales of voodoo from Haiti also made their way stateside. But one of these legends is based, at least partially, on fact. In the mid-1800s, a man named Jean Croix, originally from Senegal, made his way to the Big Easy by way of the slave trade. Eventually freed, he set up a small business in New Orleans, practicing voodoo. He had been trained in the ways of the Houngan during his time as a slave in Haiti, and he had something of a knack for it, it seems. But as he began to make a good living, crafting voodoo dolls, love potions, and talismans for the rich white residents of New Orleans, Dr. John, as he was called, saw his influence and his voodoo powers increase. Rumors began to swirl that Dr. John was upwards of 100 years old. And though he seemed like a pleasant old man to some, to others, he seemed like he still had an edge. Perhaps an underlying anger towards white men for his slavery and captivity. It's hard to blame him, but it's also confusing to learn that in response, Dr. John kept slaves of his own. New followers of Dr. John reported seeing dozens of African American men who would shamble around the Houngan's growing estate, performing menial chores, or sometimes gruesome tasks, such as visiting graveyards in the dead of the night in search of fresh body parts for the doctor's rituals. To an outsider, these slaves seemed to not be able to speak nor even to make eye contact. In fact, they seemed to be in a stupor as they mindlessly performed their tasks. And yet, these slaves are often dressed in tattered remains of what once might have been their Sunday best suit. Perhaps their burial suit. When one of Dr. John's new followers asked a longtime devotee named Marie Laveau, herself something of a voodoo legend, about the slaves, the elderly Laveau lowered her voice, explaining that they were the walking dead, reanimated by Dr. John to do his bidding. When pressed about how this could be possible, Laveau told the woman about the St. Louis Cemetery, which sat about 8 blocks away near the Mississippi River. In that cemetery, she said, is a stone platform called the Devil's Throne. One night, as the clouds covered the full moon, she accompanied Dr. John there. As he sat upon the platform, she said, he began to converse with the devil, who, over hours, recited to Dr. John more than 1,000 incantations, rituals that would allow him to take the recently deceased and turn them into zombies. After using his powers to create his zombie horde, Dr. John is said to have passed down his satanic knowledge to some of his followers. So an argument can be made that these zombie stories coming out of New Orleans today could be the result of that early meeting between the devil and Dr. John. When Marie Laveau died in 1881, it said that she insisted on being buried in St. Louis Cemetery No. 1. And that's where you'll find her remains today, as Dr. John's legacy lives on. In the late 1960s, New Orleans piano player Martin Rebenack claimed he was the reincarnation of Dr. John and adopted the Houngan's name as a stage persona. Dr. John would go on to win 6 Grammys, perhaps with the help of that old black magic. Number 1. Jiangshi. Imagine walking down an old country road where you come across a sign that reads, "Corpse Crossing." This is the reality in some rural parts of China where an ancient tradition is still said to be in practice. Although this zombie tale has more to do with practicality than the macabre, perhaps. The legend began in China's Qing dynasty sometime in the mid-1600s. As parts of China began to expand during that period, its citizens began to travel further and further outside their hometowns in search of work. However, Chinese customs still dictated that unless a recently deceased person was buried in their hometown amongst their family and friends, their ghost was doomed to remain on Earth, unsettled and lost. So, what was an undertaker to do? With no travel infrastructure in place throughout many parts of rural China, transporting a corpse across vast swaths of land proved nearly impossible. So undertakers began hiring corpse walkers, who were said to have the magical ability to reanimate a corpse, sometimes dozens of them, and, well, walk them home. Yet, while the cargo was supernatural in origin, they were still corpses, given to rotting in the heat and stiffening due to rigor mortis along the way. So the corpse walkers traveled only by night when it was cool and often worked in pairs. As the walker guided a corpse, which often had its arms stretched out in front of it, perhaps the origin of the modern zombie walk we know today, the other corpse walker would travel ahead, tossing counterfeit money into the road as payment into the afterlife. He would also have a paper lantern to light the road ahead, looking for any obstructions. Still, as the dead bodies stiffened along the journey, the corpses weren't able to walk, and as so much as they would hop along the way. That's why in some Chinese histories, the Jiangshi are called the hopping dead instead of the walking dead. According to the book The Corpse Walker by Liao Yi Wu, over particularly difficult passages in the road, one corpse walker might lift the body onto his back to carry it part of the way. And given the basket full of counterfeit money, the corpse walkers were often targets of thieves. As such, only strong and sturdy men trained in kung fu were hired for the job. This perhaps all sounds a little bit harmless and silly so far. It might even make a good plot for a Jackie Chan action comedy. But there is a darker, more evil side to the legend as well. One that colors China's current view towards the Jiangshi today. As political unrest grew in China around the time of the legend, the origins of the tale began to morph. In the original story, the corpses were often dressed in traditional Chinese garb, which somewhat resembled the idea the West has of a traditional Mandarin robe. But the legend developed into the idea that the corpses were instead dressed in tattered clothes, their skin turned green from mold and moss. The image of the corpse walkers also changed. They were once considered working-class caretakers. They soon became callous and greedy men hired by an uncaring government. These men didn't care about the bodies and souls of the people they transported. They only cared about the money. As such, they were said to take on dozens of bodies, using shackles to string along the corpses in a gruesome chain gang. Their neglectful treatment of the dead is said to have given rise to the corpses growing aware of their mistreatment. In later legends, the young Sioux were said to break their bonds and escape into the countryside. Once free, however, the only means to stay aware and alive was to suck the life force out of anyone they came across. This aspect of the legend gave rise to the idea that the young Sioux were some type of vampire, feeding on human qi, and leaving a trail of withered human remains on their path of their journey back home. The corpses' limited ability to hop also eventually morphed into the idea that they could leap from high places, often surprising their victims as they come out of the sky. In China today, Jiangshi fiction is as popular as zombie and vampire fiction is in the West, and is just as important to the popular culture there. If you have any friends who claim to practice feng shui as a way to arrange their living space, the next time you visit, look down before you step inside. If you see a 6-inch piece of wood spanning the door's opening, this is a stopgap to ward off life-sucking, hopping dead. Thank you so much for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. If you did find it interesting, please make sure you subscribe. We'll have a new video about the paranormal every week. If you just discovered this channel, please make sure you check out our other channel, Criminally Listed. We have over 325 videos featuring bizarre but true crime stories. You can find it at youtube.com/criminallylisted. Thanks again for watching.